Some days don't just go wrong, they quietly drain something out of you. You wake up expecting the usual, but nothing seems to land right. Conversations feel off, your energy feels low, and even the smallest tasks feel heavier than they should. By the end of the day, you're not just tired, you're unsettled in a way you can't fully explain. It's strange, because from the outside, it may not even look like a bad day. Nothing dramatic happened, no major failure, but inside it feels like something slipped, like you lost your rhythm, your clarity, maybe even your sense of direction. And that subtle feeling begins to grow the longer you sit with it. Then comes the quiet part, when everything slows down and your mind starts replaying the day. You revisit moments, decisions, missed opportunities. You start asking questions you weren't asking before. And slowly, the focus shifts from what happened today to what might be wrong with you. That's where the weight really begins. Not in the events themselves, but in the meaning you attach to them. A single off day starts to feel like a pattern. A few mistakes start to feel like proof. And before you know it, you're carrying something much heavier than the day itself. Most people never realize this shift is happening. They think they're just reflecting, just being honest with themselves. But what's really happening is something deeper, something that quietly chips away at their confidence, their belief, their sense of forward movement. But what if today wasn't meant to confirm your doubts? What if it was meant to challenge them? What if this day, as uncomfortable as it feels, is actually trying to redirect your attention? Not toward what you did wrong, but toward something you've been overlooking. Because there are days when things don't flow, not because you're off track, but because something is being adjusted. Something unseen is shifting beneath the surface. And while it feels like resistance, it may actually be alignment taking place in a way you can't yet recognize. Still, in the middle of it, that's not how it feels. It feels like distance, like silence, like you've somehow been left to figure everything out on your own. That's the moment where most people start to disconnect not from the world, but from something far more important. They forget that even in the quiet, even in the confusion, even in a day that didn't go as planned, there is still presence, still guidance, still something holding everything together behind the scenes. But when your attention is locked onto what went wrong, it becomes almost invisible. And that's the real turning point. Not the day itself, but what you choose to see in it. Because a bad day can either pull you further away from your center, or it can bring you back to it, if you're willing to look at it differently. There's a quiet strength that doesn't disappear just because things didn't go your way. It doesn't rely on perfect days or smooth progress. It's something deeper, something that remains steady even when everything around you feels uncertain. The challenge is, it doesn't force itself into your awareness. You have to choose to return to it. You have to pause, step back from the noise of the day, and recognize that what you're feeling isn't the full picture, it's just one layer of it. Because one difficult day doesn't define your journey. It doesn't cancel your growth. It doesn't erase everything you've been building. But if you let it shape your perception without questioning it, it can begin to distort how you see yourself. And once that distortion sets in, it becomes harder to move forward, not because you can't, but because you start to believe you shouldn't. That's how people slowly drift away from their path. Not through one failure, but through a series of misinterpreted moments. So before you decide what today means, take a breath. There is more to this day than what you experienced on the surface. There is something still working, still present, still holding you in place even when you feel off balance. And if you can hold on to that just for a moment longer, you may begin to see that this wasn't a day of loss, but a day of quiet correction. A moment that felt heavy, but carried something important within it. Something that once understood changes how you move forward from here. There are moments in a man's life that appear small when measured by outward events, yet carry a weight that feels far greater within. A day passes without major failure, without visible loss, and yet something feels unsettled. The rhythm is off, the clarity is absent. And though nothing significant seems to have occurred, the mind begins to search for meaning. This search, if left unchecked, becomes dangerous For the mind does not remain neutral for long. It seeks explanation. And when it does not find one clearly, it begins to create one. A man begins to look back upon the day. He revisits conversations, decisions, and moments that did not unfold as expected. What was once small begins to grow in importance. What was once neutral begins to take on a negative tone. And through this process, something subtle begins to form, a conclusion, not based on fact alone, but on interpretation. There is a distinction that must be clearly understood. An event is what occurs. Meaning is what is assigned to it. Most men do not separate the two. They experience something, and without pause, they interpret it. And because this interpretation happens quickly, it is often accepted as truth. A single day that felt misaligned becomes more than a day. It becomes evidence. Evidence that something is wrong. Evidence that direction has been lost. Evidence that ability has weakened. Yet this evidence is not real. It is constructed. There are many individuals who have fallen into this pattern without realizing it. They did not fail in any significant way. They did not lose their position, nor did they make an irreversible mistake. Yet through the quiet process of interpretation, they began to believe that something deeper was wrong. And from that belief, their behavior began to change. They hesitated. They questioned themselves. They approached the next day with less confidence than before. Others observed them and saw little difference outwardly. They still appeared capable, still functioning, still moving forward. Yet beneath that surface, something had shifted. Their perception of themselves had changed. There are examples of men who faced repeated discouragements, yet did not allow a single day to define them. Abraham Lincoln, in the midst of numerous setbacks, could have concluded at many points that his efforts were failing. Each loss could have been interpreted as proof of inability. Yet he did not accept such conclusions, he continued, not because every day was favorable, but because he did not assign permanent meaning to temporary conditions. There is an affirmation that supports this understanding. I do not judge my direction by a single day. This statement interrupts the habit of emotional conclusion. It creates distance between experience and identity. As this awareness develops, the man begins to observe his thinking more carefully. He notices how quickly he moves from experience to judgment, how easily a small disruption becomes a larger narrative. And through this observation, he gains something important, control. He begins to pause, not to deny what he feels, but to question what it means. There is also a shift in how he interprets discomfort. He no longer assumes that because something felt off, something is wrong. He recognizes that not every misaligned moment carries deeper significance. Some days are simply different. Some moments do not reflect the whole. Others begin to notice this change. They see a man who does not overreact to temporary conditions. He does not allow a single experience to alter his direction. There is a steadiness in how he carries himself, a sense that he is not easily influenced by fluctuation. This perception carries strength, for those who remain measured in their thinking are often seen as composed. They are regarded as individuals who can maintain clarity, even when conditions are not ideal. And through this, they begin to build trust. There is also a change in how the individual experiences his own mind. It becomes less reactive, less urgent. He no longer feels the need to immediately explain every discomfort. He allows space between what happens and what it means. And in that space, something becomes possible. Clarity without distortion. It must be understood that the danger is not in the difficult day itself, it is in the meaning assigned to it. A man who misinterprets a single day may begin to alter his behavior unnecessarily. He may slow his movement, question his direction, or reduce his effort, not because anything has truly changed, but because he believes it has. This is how momentum is lost, not through failure, but through misjudgment. There may still be moments where the mind attempts to form conclusions quickly, where the weight of the day feels heavier than it should, and where the urge to define what has occurred becomes strong. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not rush, he observes, he waits before assigning meaning. Over time, this produces a powerful effect. The man becomes stable in his perception. He no longer fluctuates with every change in experience. He maintains direction even when the day does not go as expected. There are examples of individuals who, by simply refusing to define themselves by isolated moments, were able to maintain a level of consistency that others could not. They did not avoid difficulty, they avoided distortion. Others often described them as grounded, yet what they had developed was discipline in interpretation. Thus, the misjudgment of a single day is revealed as one of the most subtle dangers a man may face, not because the day itself is significant, but because of what it may lead him to believe. The man who understands this does not deny that some days feel heavier. He simply refuses to allow them to define what is larger than them. He separates experience from identity. He observes before concluding, and in doing so, he protects something far more important than a single day, his direction. For it is not the day that determines where a man is going, it is the meaning he assigns to it. And the moment he takes control of that meaning, he takes control of what follows. There is a process that begins after the events of a difficult day have passed, and it is here that the true weight is often created. Not in what occurred, but in what is remembered. A man sits in stillness, and his mind begins to return to the moments that felt misaligned. At first it appears as reflection, yet if left without direction, it becomes something else. It becomes distortion. The mind does not replay events as they happened. It alters them. It selects certain moments, enlarges them, and gives them greater importance than they originally held. What was once a small misstep becomes a defining error. What was once a passing discomfort becomes a lasting impression. And through repetition, this altered version begins to feel true. A man begins to believe that the day was worse than it was, that he was less capable than he is, that something deeper is wrong. This process is subtle. It does not announce itself. It appears as thinking, yet its effect is powerful. For the man who does not question these thoughts begins to accept them. There are many who fall into this pattern without realizing it. They believe they are simply reviewing their actions, learning from their experience, and gaining understanding. Yet what they are actually doing is reinforcing a version of events that weakens them. Others observe them and see no visible decline. They are still active, still capable, still present. Yet something within has shifted. Their confidence has lowered. Their clarity has blurred. Their sense of direction has weakened. And this has not occurred because of the day itself, but because of how it has been. Repeated in the mind. There are examples of individuals who abandon promising paths not because of failure, but because of accumulated distortion. A few difficult experiences, repeated and magnified through thought, became enough to convince them that they were not progressing. In truth, they were, but they no longer believed it. This is the danger of unexamined reflection. There is a principle that must be understood. The mind, when left without guidance, will not always move toward truth. It often moves toward what is most emotionally charged. And what is emotionally charged is not always accurate. There is an affirmation that supports this awareness. I direct my thoughts, I do not let them direct me. This statement introduces authority. It reminds the man that thinking is not something that happens to him, but something he must guide. As this awareness develops, the man begins to observe his internal dialogue more closely. He notices how certain thoughts repeat, how certain moments are revisited, and how easily his attention returns to what felt wrong. He begins to question these patterns, not to deny what happened, but to see it clearly. There is also a shift in how he approaches reflection. He no longer allows it to continue without structure. He asks himself, what is useful here? What requires correction? What must be released? These questions interrupt distortion. They replace repetition with direction. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not become consumed by his thoughts. He reflects, but he does not dwell. He considers, but he does not exaggerate. There is a clarity in his thinking that separates him from those who are carried by their own minds. This perception carries strength. For those who can control their thinking are often seen as composed. They are regarded as individuals who do not allow temporary experiences to distort their judgment. And through this, they become more effective in their actions. There is also a change in how the individual experiences memory. It becomes more balanced, less influenced by emotion. He no longer recalls only what went wrong. He sees the day in its entirety, the effort, the moments of stability, the actions that were taken. This broader view reduces distortion. It restores proportion. It must be understood that a single thought, repeated enough times, can shape a man's perception of himself. And perception, when left unchallenged, begins to influence behavior. The man who believes he has declined begins to act with hesitation. The man who believes he has lost clarity begins to move with doubt. And in this way, distortion begins to create its own reality. There may still be moments where the mind attempts to return to familiar patterns, where certain memories feel stronger than others, and where the inclination to replay what went wrong becomes present. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not follow them without question. He redirects them. Over time, this produces a powerful effect. The man becomes clear in his thinking. He is no longer influenced by every thought that arises. He chooses what he reinforces. There are examples of individuals who, by learning to control their internal dialogue, were able to maintain confidence even after difficult experiences. They did not avoid reflection. They directed it. Others often describe them as mentally strong. Yet what they had developed was discipline in thought. Thus, the silent distortion that follows a difficult day is revealed as something that must be managed. It does not require elimination, but it requires direction. The man who understands this does not allow his mind to replay without control. He observes, he selects, he directs, and in doing so, he prevents a single day from becoming something greater than it is. For it is not the event that shapes the man, it is the way it is remembered. And the moment he takes control of that memory, he takes control of what it becomes. There are days that do not unfold in harmony with expectation, and because of this, they are often judged as unproductive, misplaced, or even wasted. A man looks back upon such a day and sees only what did not align, what felt off, what did not flow, what seemed to resist his effort. Yet in this judgment, something important is overlooked, that not all misalignment is loss. Some of it is correction. A man moves forward with intention, guided by what he believes to be the right direction. Yet as he proceeds, there are moments where the path does not respond as expected. Conversations feel distant. Actions do not produce the same effect. There is a sense that something is not connecting. This is often interpreted as error. Yet it may be adjustment. There is a distinction that must be understood. Not every disruption is opposition. Some disruptions are guidance in a form that is not immediately recognized. There are many individuals who, in the midst of such days, believed they had moved incorrectly. They questioned their decisions, reconsidered their direction, and in some cases attempted to return to what felt more certain. Yet those who observed their path over time recognized something different, that these moments were not setbacks, they were refinements. Consider the example of men such as Henry Ford, whose early efforts did not align with immediate success. His ventures failed, his direction shifted, and at times it appeared that he was moving away from his goal rather than toward it. Yet in those moments of misalignment, something was taking place. His approach was being corrected, his understanding was being refined, his path was being adjusted. What appeared as failure was, in truth, preparation. There is an affirmation that supports this awareness. Even this day carries something that strengthens me. This statement does not deny discomfort. It recognizes that value may exist within it, even when it is not immediately visible. As this understanding develops, the man begins to observe his difficult days differently. He no longer sees them only for what they lacked. He begins to consider what they revealed. What felt unclear begins to provide insight. What felt resistant begins to offer direction. There is also a shift in how he experiences discomfort. He no longer moves to avoid it immediately. He studies it. He asks, "What is this showing me? What is not aligned? What requires adjustment?" These questions transform the experience. They turn what felt like disruption into something purposeful. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not react impulsively to difficulty. He does not withdraw at the first sign of resistance. Instead, he observes, reflects, and adjusts with clarity. There is a sense of composure in his behavior that reflects deeper understanding. This perception carries strength. For those who can find value in discomfort are often seen as wise. They are regarded as individuals who do not waste experience, who extract meaning from difficulty, and who continue forward with greater insight. There is also a change in how the individual experiences direction. It becomes more precise, more refined. He no longer assumes that his initial understanding is complete. He allows experience to shape it. He adjusts without losing movement. It must be understood that alignment is not always immediate. A man may begin in one direction only to discover through experience that something must be altered. This is not failure, it is refinement. There may still be moments where discomfort feels unnecessary, where the day appears to offer nothing but resistance, and where the mind suggests that nothing of value has occurred. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not conclude too quickly. He allows understanding to develop. Over time, this produces a powerful effect. The man becomes more perceptive. He sees patterns where others see problems. He finds direction where others feel confusion. He moves with greater awareness. There are examples of individuals who, by learning to extract value from misaligned days, were able to progress more effectively than those who only valued smooth progress. They did not require every day to feel right. They required every day to teach something. Others often described them as thoughtful. Yet what they had developed was insight. Thus, the hidden value within a difficult day is revealed not as something obvious, but as something that must be recognized. The man who understands this does not rush to label a day as wasted. He examines it, he reflects upon it, he uses it, and in doing so, he transforms what once felt like disruption into something that guides him forward. For it is not the ease of the day that determines its value, it is what the man is able to see within it. And the moment he begins to see clearly, even the most difficult day becomes useful. There is a moment, after a difficult day, where a man stands at a quiet point of decision, though he may not recognize it as such. The events have passed, the conversations are over, the effort has been spent, yet something remains unsettled within him. It is not the day itself that continues, it is the state it has left behind. And this state, if not addressed, begins to carry forward. Most men attempt to correct this by focusing outward. They think of what must be done differently, what must be fixed, what must be improved. They prepare to act again, to move again, to correct what seemed off. Yet in doing so, they overlook something essential. That movement without balance creates repetition. If the internal state remains disturbed, the next action will reflect it. And so, before anything else, there must be a return not to circumstance, but to center. There is a distinction that must be understood. A man does not move forward effectively from a place of imbalance. He may move, but not with clarity. There are many individuals who, after a difficult day, attempted to push forward immediately. They increased their effort, intensified their thinking, and sought to regain control through action. Yet because their internal condition remained unsettled, their actions lacked precision. They repeated the same patterns, not because they lacked ability, but because they had not restored their state. In contrast, there are those who recognize the importance of pause, not as withdrawal, not as avoidance, but as restoration. They understand that before direction can be regained outwardly, it must be regained inwardly. This is where balance begins. There is an affirmation that supports this return. I return to my center, and from there, I move again. This statement shifts focus away from correction and toward alignment. It acknowledges that the man himself must be steady before his actions can be effective. As this awareness develops, the man begins to observe his internal condition more closely. He notices the lingering tension, the subtle frustration, the quiet sense of misalignment. He does not attempt to ignore it, nor does he rush to act through it. He allows himself to settle. There is also a shift in how he approaches stillness. He no longer sees it as inactivity, he sees it as preparation. In this stillness, the mind begins to clear, the weight begins to lessen, the distortion begins to fade, and what remains is something more accurate, more stable. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not carry yesterday into today without awareness. He does not react impulsively, nor does he attempt to compensate for what has passed. There is a composure in his presence, a sense that he has regained control of himself. This perception carries strength. For those who can restore their balance are often seen as grounded. They are regarded as individuals who are not easily thrown off, who can return to clarity quickly, and who can move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. There is also a change in how the individual experiences clarity. It returns naturally, not forced, not constructed. He begins to see more clearly what must be done, not because he has thought more intensely, but because he has removed what was clouding his view. It must be understood that imbalance is not permanent. It is a condition that can be corrected, but it cannot be corrected through force. It must be allowed to settle. There may still be moments where the urge to act immediately returns, where the mind suggests that movement alone will restore control. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not rush. He stabilizes first. Over time, this produces a powerful effect. The man becomes more consistent. He no longer carries disruption forward. He resets. He returns. He begins again with clarity. There are examples of individuals who, by learning to restore their internal balance before acting, were able to move more effectively than those who relied solely on effort. They did not act more, they acted with greater precision. Others often describe them as composed. Yet what they had developed was control over their internal state. Thus, the return to balance is revealed as a necessary step, not an optional one. The man who understands this does not attempt to move forward while unsettled. He returns to himself. He regains clarity. He restores his center. And in doing so, he ensures that what follows is not a continuation of disturbance, but a movement from stability. For it is not the action alone that determines outcome. It is the condition from which that action is taken. And the man who moves from balance moves with clarity, strength, and direction once more. There is a moment after a difficult day where a man begins to question something deeper than the events themselves. It is no longer about what happened, but about what it says about him. He begins to feel as though something has slipped, not just in the day, but within himself, as though the strength he once carried has diminished. Yet this feeling, though convincing, is not accurate. For strength does not disappear in a single day. It does not vanish because of misalignment. It does not leave because of discomfort. What changes is not the strength itself, but the man's awareness of it. There is a distinction that must be clearly understood. A man may not feel strong and still be strong. Many confuse feeling with fact. They believe that because they do not feel steady, they are no longer steady. That because they do not feel confident, they have lost confidence. Yet feeling is often influenced by moment, by fatigue, by circumstance. Strength is not.